Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Florent Tunno. I'm a French lighting artist based in Paris. So far, I've been a lighting artist for 3 years and a half now. I've been working at Dortmund, and recently I moved to Studio Gerbo in Brighton. And today I will be talking about the importance of lighting in games and in production. So basically, lighting can make or break a scene. This is a phrase that you will hear very often. But lighting isn't the only important things in game. You have to consider everything that you create, like the characters, the environment, the mesh albedos, etc. Because lighting affects everything, but everything affects lighting. So lighting is very dependent on the material that you will have in your scene. And it's not only important in games, but also in films and photography. So, as you can see in certain movies or photos that you can see on the internet, when you say, "Oh, this is a beautiful shot," often the lighting will do a lot of the work on the shot. So, paying attention to lighting is very important. The thing is, lighting doesn't do everything, as I said. Lighting is often used to guide the player, but the environment shape and the visual lines that guide the eye of the player it's important too. Like for example, in this shot, the eye is drawn to this part of the image, but the lighting doesn't do everything. Yes, you have the sun like produces a rim light on the rock here, but the path is clearly laid down by the environment. Like your eye goes towards this point because the environment helps, like guiding the eye of the player. And environment shaping starts with level design. And in my opinion, I think it's very important to give the environment artist team the liberty of interpreting the LD blockout without obviously destroying the intention of the game design or level design. But having your environment art team producing strong lines or shapes will help guide the player. Like in this example too, this is obviously the important point. So this is from Uncharted 4. And in the island level, you will almost always have this big rock that has the shape of a creature, I'd say. In visual, like it will always be in your sight, and this is how to guide the eye of the player through environment, through through lines, through shapes, through colors, and meshes are nothing without their albedos, and this is often used in the cinema industry. Like for example, if you heard about the bounce cards. And why it's so important, you will understand why I'm talking about albedos. Because in photography or videography, you can use what we call bounce cards. So basically, these are big cardboards with a color that it could be neutral gray, white, black, etc. And those are used to reflect light and use bounce lighting to light a scene. You can have a positive bounce card or negative bounce card. A positive bounce card will bounce the light and give more light to the opposite side of the bounce card. And the negative bounce card will be basically a black or dark gray card that will block light bouncing from an object to another. And to illustrate that, I have some image here. So this is a very, very, very simple lighting setup. You have the walls, you have one light, it's a rectangle light, so it's directed below, and it doesn't illuminate the ceiling directly. All of the meshes here use a neutral gray material. So this is 0.18 RGB. And as you can see, the light isn't bouncing much from the meshes because they are very dark. You can see that the shadows are very dark. You can distinguish the shapes, but there is not much bounces, because in a video game engine or any 3D software, basically modern 3D software at least, the light works just as in real life. you have your light source that is casting or emitting light, and then the light will bounce all around the meshes. But if you are shining light to a dark material, the material will absorb most of the light and won't bounce much. And this is what's happening here. And to illustrate the opposite, if we bump up the value, the lightness value of this mesh, all I did here is increase the value from 0.18 RGB to 0.5. And as you can see there, now you can distinguish details in the shadows. You can see that the light is bouncing from the ground and illuminating the sides of the sphere here. It's illuminating this face of the rectangle. The ceiling gets much brighter because there is more bounce light. And remember, the light is oriented towards the ground, not the ceiling. And because of the bouncing of the light, we have because there is more light bounces, we have more light overall, basically. And what if we add colors to it? Because colors are very important. As you can see there, neutral gray, 0.18 RGB with pure green, pure red. And you can see that the side of the sphere gets green and red. This is because the light bouncing from the wall is coming back to the sphere and illuminating it. And this is how light works in real life. If you are using a light reflector, like an orange material to bounce light from a light source, the side of your subject will be orange. And this is why, for example, if you take a photo with your model or your subject that is leaning on a colored wall, you will have the side of your subject that is taking the color of the wall because the light is bouncing from the wall. And same thing, if we bump up the albedo value of the gray meshes, you have more bounce, and the difference is like very, very visible on this rectangle here. As you can see much more detail. And this is why considering albedos, shapes, and environment design for lighting is very important. Now we will have a word about color theory, because knowing that light bounce, etc. is good, but how can you use the colors and the lighting to support the other departments? Like one of the things that I really love about lighting is that you can change the mood of a scene depending on the lighting. Is the character feeling a bit down, or is it a cheerful scene and you won't use the same color palette? So basically, you have multiple values that defines lighting. It's often we often refer to HRSV. The U value refers to the angle in the color wheel. So from 0 to 360, and you will have blue, purple, etc. Then you have the saturation. The lower the saturation, the less saturated the color will be. And at 0, it's just shades of gray. And if you have 100% saturation, it's the pure color. But on top of that, you have the value or lightness. So the lightness refers to the luminance value of the color. Like the lower the value, the darker. And when you reach 0 as a value, you will have black, basically. So you have this kind of pattern going on your color wheel. You have all the shades of orange, greens, etc. And we often will use that to define the color of the scene. And you might have heard of complementary colors. So complementary colors are a manner of associating colors together, but people often tend to know about the opposite complementary colors, like for example reds and blues, orange and blues, etc. But there is the complementary colors doesn't go only for opposite colors on the wheel. You can have the complementary colors on the sides, like combining reds with pink with orange, combining reds with purple, with green, and with blues. So this is not very complex. You have shapes and patterns on going on the complementary colors. And let me just, I forgot one slide to show you. I will just grab it real quick. But you'll see that I have a diagram showing basically the different complementary colors things. Sorry about that, just forgot to implement it. There you are. Yeah, there. So sorry, it's in French. It's one of my former lighting course. But as you can see, you have split complementary colors, the analog colors. So this is what I was talking about. The colors that are on the side, etc. And if you watch movies like the Pixar movies, Toy Story, etc., the latest Toy Story 4 uses a lot of monochromatic combination, analog combination. And if you want to enrich your scene, you could try to avoid only using opposite complementary colors on the wheel. But you might have heard about the temperature of a light. So basically, the temperature of a light refers to the temperature of a white light. If you have lower values, it's in Kelvin. If you have lower values, the light will be warmer, and if the value is higher, the light will be cooler. And some objects from the real world that you are encountering on a daily basis use warm whites, like your lights, your light bulbs at home will use warm light or daylight based bulbs. Sorry. So if you are using light fixtures, that are not colored, like white light fixtures, if you are setting up a sun in your scene, etc., using Kelvin values, temperature values, instead of guessing the color on the sRGB wheel will give you a more realistic and a more accurate lighting values for your lights in your scene. And when you combine all of this, you get the wheel of emotion. So if you watch the animated movie about the emotions of that are inside the head of the little girl, I can't remember the name, but you have the 4 or 5 emotions, and every emotion gets associated with a color. And this is how we interpret colors and lights based on the thing we encounter during our life. So if, for example, you want to make a scene more dramatic or melancholic or sad, you will go towards the blues and the greens. If you want to give joy, you will go towards the yellows or the oranges. And this can be very, very not complex, but detailed, as you can see here. So a good example of that would be The Last of Us Part 1. So I've played the PS4 version or the PS3 version a while ago, but this is the same going on for the newer released PS5 version. So basically at the beginning of the game, spoiler alert, if you didn't play The Last of Us Part 1, turn off the sound right now, because I will spoil, I'm sorry. But at the beginning of the game, Joel, the main character, loses his daughter. So the scenes at the beginning of the game are more desaturated. The color palette leans towards blues and the greens, like you can see here, to emphasis on the fact that Joel lost somebody he loved, and he's basically sad all the time. It just keeps going on because life continues, but he has this sadness inside him. And this reminds me the movie Children of Men, because the same color palettes is used. And this is why I'm advocating for studying movie stills from as many movies as you can watch. Try to freeze the frame and analyze the lighting and the color palette, because lighting isn't everything. As I said, like the global image will give a certain mood, a certain feeling to the spectator. And if you played The Last of Us Part 1, you can see that when you go towards the end of the game, the image gets warmer and warmer, because Joel encountered Ellie. He is attached emotionally to her, and as you can see here, both are in an abandoned city. So the city is basically destroyed, but with the saturation and the difference between this city and this one, you have saturated greens, very bright yellows on the cars. The sky is blue. The lighting is a bit warmer, and all of this contributes to a feeling of safety to the character, even if you can get attacked from left and right at some point on this level. But there are some times when you just walk and talk with Ellie, and when you have exchange with her, like on this frame, and this is very, very obvious between this and this. This is more sad. This is more cheerful. And so we talked about environment lighting, but as I said, you have many influence on lighting. And one of the influence of the environment and the environment lighting is given to the cinematic lighting. Because cinematic lighting will often, most of the time, will use the environment lighting as a base. And you will have to think about how to motivate the light. Like, light can't come from nowhere. If you have a cave without any light source, without any opening to the exterior, without any artificial light source in the interior, you can place a point light, but it will feel odd because the light comes from nowhere. And we can see that on this shot. You have the light fixture here and all of the light fixtures on the background, but those aren't lighting the character. You have a huge lighting setup outside of the frame that is lighting the character here, but this is just there to justify the fact that light comes on the face of this character, and it's obvious here. Like, there is no way this light here, this small table light, is lighting the whole scene. This is there just to justify the fact that you have light on this character, and there is an opposite shot on the shot before this one, when you can see a similar shot as this one with a lot of background motivated light, like practical light. And practical lights as those table lamps, those ceiling lamps, ceiling fixtures, etc., will help you achieve motivated lighting. And this is very, very important. And motivated lighting can come from the nature itself. If you have a big open window, you will have light coming from the outside on your interior, lighting your scene or your cinematic. Like there, in this barbershop, those lights don't contribute much to the lighting. The window here with the sun and the sunlight and the skylight on the exterior are the main light source of this scene, and the light is bouncing all around, lighting the character. Like you have a rim light going on here, and this is the same here. They are sitting next to a window, and the main light source is coming from the window on the character. And this is how you can achieve more efficient and more realistic cinematic environment lighting. You have to consider having natural light or practical light helping you, justifying the light that it's there. Like, for example, on the level, you can have light fixtures on the ceiling, and those will cast light. But if the light isn't bright enough, you could cheat using a dedicated bounce light in the middle of your scene. But this won't feel odd if you brighten up the light of your scene, because you have those fixtures, and the player or the spectator will understand that because there are light sources, I can justify the presence of light overall in the scene. And this is why I'm advocating to consider lighting during production. Because lighting, we are not like wizards. We don't do magic. So if you don't plan carefully the level design, the environment design, and the cinematics shot, etc., you will basically give trouble to your lighting team, because we are really dependent on what we are given. So lighting is GPU intensive. Like it's one of the most GPU intensive department. Like often when you are opening a scene and it's not running really well, if you turn down some lighting settings, or if you turn off the lighting, you get your performance back. So this is why planning lighting accordingly to level design, environment, etc., like way before you are doing giving the scene to the lighting artist team, is very important. Because there will be time where the lighting team won't be able to give the proper response to the task that you are giving them, because sometimes the engine isn't meant to work this way. Sometimes, for example, you have a cave, and you say, the character will go to this cave. You have to do the lighting of the cave. Okay, but some simple question can avoid difficulties later on. For example, is the cave having some openings on the exterior? Because it will allow more natural light to come in, bounce, and illuminating the scene naturally. Is it abandoned? If yes, for how long? Because if it's abandoned for a long time, will there be some objects on the ground or on the walls that the player can lit or use to brighten up the scene? Like, for example, in Jedi Fallen Order, they have very dark interiors, and the character is using his lightsaber to light the path in front of him. And this is one of the many manners that you can solve an interior underground problem. Give the character a light source. And if you don't, how can you justify the fact that there is light? And is there, will you be using real life camera exposure values? Because if you look at if you watch some movies, you'll see that when they are inside an apartment or an environment, the windows get blown out. It's very white because you're exposing for the interior. But if you don't want those extreme exposure values going on, this very cinematic look to your game, you have to planify it beforehand. Because if you only rely on auto exposure to brighten up your interiors or your caves, etc., the result won't look very good. Because if there is no light, you can't invent or make light happen magically. This doesn't work like that. You have to have light sources. And those questions are very important because it can break immersion and performance in some time if you decide to add an underground level and your lighting team isn't aware of that, and you do it like late in production, and your lighting team didn't have the time to think about how to do it, we would have to basically try to do the best that we can, and it won't look as good as if it was planned, basically. And all of this will avoid headaches and frustration, because it's very frustrating for a department, and it's not only for the lighting artist department, to receive a task that hasn't been planned or talked about way before, and in the end you can end up saying, oh yeah, could you modify your level design or your block out to make like a hole in the ceiling to let light go inside? And if the department says, no, we can't, we are over budget, we don't have the time for this, basically you could have avoided this situation by asking the concerned department a month or weeks before. And yeah, all of this was to talk about the importance of lighting in the production, Because basically the phrase that you have to remember is lighting artists aren't wizards. we are just game devs like everybody is. And continue studying lighting in movies, in films, and in games to improve and just to support your team as the best as you could. And that's what I had to say about lighting in production. And I hope you found it useful.
Thank you so much, Florent Tunno, for taking the time to share this amazing workshop for us at Beyond Extent. Make sure to check out their work in the description below. We also want to throw out a big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. These workshops are only possible because of your support. Head on over to beyondextent.com where you can find access to our community, environment art resources, and get access to the live Q&A sessions that always accompanies these workshops. Stay creative and see you out there.